I never intended to be a hobby farmer, but I also never intended to get into real estate. So life throws all sorts of fun surprises at you if you're open to them. New with Keller Williams, I've been here for about a year, but I think anything that you start doing in the middle of a pandemic just feels like it's in a surreal Twilight Zone time. So I both feel like I have always been with Keller Williams and like I'm still just onboarding and brand new. So 2020 and 2021, gotta love it. I have worked in pretty much every paradigm of real estate, residential real estate that you can. I've been a single agent, I've been part of a team, I had a partnership, and I run a team. So if you've got questions about the different types of opportunities there, I am your gal because I've done it all. With a small team, average production is right around 100 units a year. I'm personally responsible typically for about average of 40 transactions a year, give or take, depending on how involved I am with the team. So that's my 2 cents. When Chris reached out to the members of the ALC and asked us to participate in Ignite and speak to you about these different topics, I looked through, and the very first one that grabbed my attention that I wanted to share about was understanding scripts. And that tells you about the particular kind of psychosis that I have, because it's definitely not the most fun or sexy topic, but I would dare say it is the most underrated and misunderstood topic. So going into a training on scripts, people will typically tell you, I know you're avoiding them, I know you hate them, I hated them too, and here's how I got over that. I never hated scripts. I always embraced them. I always got it about scripts. I got it about the importance of them. And that's really because of my mom. So I won the lotto in mothers. She's absolutely amazing. And she's not in real estate. She's not in sales. She's a teacher and a musician. I would say that every career is sales in some degree, but that's neither here nor there. She's a teacher, she's a musician, but she understands communication and relationship building. And so when I was young, if I would have a conflict that I was dealing with, if I was going into a situation where there was going to be a highly consequential conversation or a conflict conversation, she would help me prepare a script. So I would come home and say, this kid is bullying me, or my best friend is being so mean, or this teacher is doing this thing that's unfair. And we would sit down and she would help me put together a script. And that script would start with the end result in mind. What is it that I'm aiming to create in this conversation? What is important to me? And then we would work through that. And I would tell her what I thought I would say, and she would tell me why that was wrong. And then we would work around and get to some effective languaging. And then we would role play. And I would role play this script with my mom, and she was a tough but fair role play partner. She gave me all sorts of objections, so I got really good at overcoming objections. And the result of that was that I was really able to self-advocate. And she was not the helicopter mom that would swoop in. She really left me to do that and trusted me to do that, but also gave me the skills to do that. So flash forward, I stumble into real estate, and as they're getting ready to put me on the phones and hand me a script and say, this is what you're going to do, I just got it. Like, I have a desired result in this conversation. I want to convert this to a buyer appointment or a listing appointment or whatever the case may be. So of course, I would put together some thoughtful languaging around that. I would be prepared for that conversation. I would have a direction that I want to take this conversation. And of course, I would need to practice that, and I would need to internalize that. It was something that I just got. All sorts of other things I had a hard time with, but that part I got. So I come to this with a real love and appreciation for what scripts make possible in real estate, but also just in life. But before we dig into that, I know that there are a lot of reasons that people avoid scripts or feel a certain sort of way as they start looking at it. It's one of those brilliant basics that I think being in real estate for about 5 minutes, you know that you need to start learning some scripts, but there's some resistance to it. So what are those pain points for you? What are the things that come up when you start thinking about scripting?
I love scripting.
I love it.
No, I can't do that.
You guys both had awesome moms.
For me, it's funny you said I actually had a mom that was very good. I wouldn't necessarily say scripting, but she's so good at communicating.
Mhm.
So she taught me at an early age to listen, right,
Mhm.
to lead with my ears. And so for me, that is a big thing. Like, I'm not a real estate agent to be a salesman. I'm a real estate agent to problem solve. So when I hear these scripts, I'm like, wait a second, like I feel like a salesman.
Right.
You know, so I think the big thing for me when it comes to scripts is like what I'll do. I noticed is I started to just do some lead generation and made a call, and there was an objection. He was just flat out like no. And for me, I've never had someone tell me no, like because I just love humans, and before like I'm always there to help them, so I've never really had that objection. And when I was talking with Joe Reardon, he was like, learn the objections. And so I'm finding this new love for scripting, but I almost reject it because I don't want to lose who I am. And
So
care
the
for
fear in
others.
that is, I'm hearing two things. One, the fear of being a salesperson, which is absolutely a 4-letter word. And then the fear of losing yourself. And I think those are two distinct and very valid things that come up for people. So what else?
Fear of sounding robotic.
Good one.
Just confidence with it. Building.
So say more about that.
I think it kind of stems from what Levi is saying, but not delivering it with conviction because you don't believe you can serve someone well enough. So working on that first.
Yeah.
Believing.
Yeah.
So belief in self, belief in what you're saying. If you're saying I'm great and this is why I'm great.
Yeah.
Actually believing that you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, so it's not just a slick line. Okay.
Yeah.
What else?
I think it's just like learning the objections and learn how to get them back on the script once they go off the script.
Yeah. The fact that they don't have a copy of the script, so sometimes they take you places that you're not ready to go, and you're like, "Ooh, wait, no, I'm looking at this here. This is what you're supposed to say next." So yeah, okay. So leading the conversation and a fear that you won't be able to get them back.
I guess a lot of us are just fear of the rejections too. A lot of the other agents. I'm trying to think of a lot of like what everybody. And I would say the fear of rejection is a big one for some people.
Yeah. I would venture to say that fear of rejection is a big one for all of us. It'll manifest however it manifests. It may be fear of rejection because I'm not being my authentic self, and so you're going to reject this phony version of me. It might be fear of rejection that I'm going to come across as a salesperson, and so you're going to reject me. But if you were to like work your way through it and say, and then what, and then what, and then what, it's rejection's a big one. Like, yeah, it's a big one. Like up with death and spiders and public speaking. So, what else? Anything else that comes up for you?
I think it's really rewording. And the interesting thing is the fear is the underlying thing. So we can talk about all these other things, but I love how you said, continue asking the why and then eventually get down to the fear part. But going to the salesperson side, being caught up in wording sometimes, right? And looking at content of the wording so much over maybe other areas of the script.
So getting too caught up in the wording, getting too caught up in the mechanics, maybe analysis paralysis.
Sure.
I have one.
Yeah.
I use too many words.
Okay.
Same.
Same fam, same. I definitely understand that one. All right, so using too many words, getting caught up in wording. Anyone suffer from perfection syndrome, where you'll use the script as soon as when it comes out of your mouth, it's like magical golden fairies singing, but until then, you're just going to keep it locked up because it's not perfect. Yeah, low perfectionism. Okay. Anything else?
I would say like this goes along with sticking to the script, but I use language that lets people off the hook. Like, if, If not, no worries. Yeah, kind of thing all the time.
Chase each
So
other around.
sticking
Yeah.
to the question and then leaving it.
They kind of all root with rejection. Now
Yeah.
that you say that, it's so crazy. Wow.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing. And here's the really interesting thing, once you start digging into this, on the other side of that phone or on the other side of the table, you're talking to someone else whose greatest fear is rejection too. And powerful scripting and thoughtful, meaningful conversation patterns alleviates their fear of rejection and actually creates a better experience for them. So it's an interesting situation. It's an interesting chess game. Anything else? Like if we addressed all of these issues, is there another one out there that you'd say, yeah, but, or did we hit them all?
Maybe my script is better. It's the same thing. It's worded different ways.
Yeah.
Like I don't need a script because I have this experience and I don't,
Just feeling like you don't need it. And that brings up another one for me that I see a lot where you're constantly looking for a better script and you'll do scripting once you find the perfect script, but until then you shouldn't memorize any script because it's probably not the perfect one.
Yeah.
So, again, that's searching for perfection.
Do I do that, Chris? I feel like maybe. I know I always ask you if I do it, but it's just because I like to look from not my own perspective.
Just assume you do it all.
I was gonna say, yeah. I'm sure. My mom always said I had a God complex, so I have to ask other people because I feel like I'm just.
Perfectionism. Yeah.
Just good coping mechanism.
Yeah.
All right, so with all of the reasons why not, and we'll absolutely address these, let's talk about why do you use a script? I mean, we made a pretty compelling case not to, right down to the fear of rejection. What's worse than that? But why would you?
Because it's meaningful, it's authentic.
Okay, say more about that.
So, I mean, I look more into not necessarily the real estate script, but the scripts for life, like you were saying. So I've focused a lot on communication, especially in these past few years. Like my whole girlfriend's family was just like, we hate you because I tease too much, I joke too much. So I started to learn the meaningful scripts that come with communicating with others. So listening, providing like the correct, authentic, kind of like just like direction, you know. So I don't know. For me, that's what's really important. Is like I want to come off authentic and I want to come off real. And when it comes to scripting, it's a big thing. So that's why I do want to learn it. I really don't want to reject it, but I want to get really good at it so I can bring that value and be confident and almost make them feel like I can take care of them.
I like that. What else?
To accomplish the objective, like you were saying, of the conversation, you have that in mind at the start of it.
Yeah, that you're going into conversations with an intention in place and a result that you're aiming towards at the end. What else?
I think scripting is so important too, because I feel like the more you memorize, the more you practice different scripts, the more you can pull from those things and utilize those in conversation so you can actually truly listen to them too. Like once you've got the scripts mastered, so you don't really have to think about it very much, you can actually listen to the people, so you can actually find that help that they're looking for and find what they need by not having to think about what you're saying as much and fumbling over your words.
Yes.
You know how to get to what you need to get to with them.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And we all have this persona and this ego going on and a fear of rejection and a fear of looking bad and a fear of embarrassment. And so when we go into a conversation and we aren't prepared with what we're going to say, we will spend that conversation thinking through what's next, you know, and that prevents you from being able to really connect. That prevents you from being able to really hear what it is that they need and to really be able to serve. So I think that's absolutely spot on. I find that powerful scripting actually allows me to connect and be more authentic than if I go into a conversation without the script in place, because my mind's not spinning trying to think of what comes up next. I'm not trying to figure it out on the fly. What else?
There's safety in scripts.
Yeah. So say more about that. What does that safety allow you?
I mean, if you really know and master your scripts, there's like an answer for every question. There's like security. You don't have to be a brainiac. You don't have to, it's not rocket science. But
Right.
I mean, at least for me, I feel it's staying in my sandbox,
Yeah. Well, and I think that answers kind of what you brought up as far as when the person you're talking to deviates off of the script and there's that kind of panic about reeling them back, that to me is a sign of a script that's not fully memorized and internalized, because when it's truly memorized and internalized, they can go wherever they go and you have the confidence that I'm going to be able to keep them moving forward towards what the desired end result is. And
Yeah.
I want to be really clear, that desired end result is a discovery. This is not me saying you're going to use these scripts because the desired end result is that they're going to sign with you and they're going to go to this price and they're going to, I don't buy into that. The end result, the end result is that you discover what is their pain point, that you discover what is their need, that you identify how you can serve them and fulfill what they need done, and creating that discovery for them to see that you are the person who's able to do that. So it's sales, but it's sales in a pure form, not in a, well, if you act now.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more. So what else? Any other reasons we use scripts?
I think that's the scene in Wolf of Wall Street.
Uh-huh.
I guess you guys probably see that. So Jordan Belfort is teaching this whole like department about scripts. And everyone's in awe at the end of the conversation. And he's made the sale and he did such a good job at it. Then he taught everyone else the script and everyone else from there.
Yeah.
Except you lied. But you're right, you're so right. It is not. I think they kind of all have the same, like it goes around being effective. And so being effective in like there's authentic ways and everything. I agree. Like, so I transport troubled youth, and you go in the middle of the night and you say, hey, you're coming with us. The parents don't say anything, like you are kidnapping them legally, and you have to be effective on what they say, on what you say, because that determines whether they're going to run or whether it's a fight. There's so much to be said about being effective with those scripts.
Right. That makes absolute sense. And I love what you brought up here, which is scripts are a tool. They're not good or bad as far as like from an ethical intrinsic value. I mean, I guess you could look at a particular script and say if you're telling the truth or if you're lying, but it's about what you do with it. And so if you're the Wolf of Wall Street and you're using this to screw people out of money, then you are intrinsically bad, but the script is a tool.
Right.
It's a tool that's used. It's the same thing as money. It's the root of evil is not money, it's what you do with it. So anything else?
I just have to make a comment. Let's even say outside of scripts, can you guys tell pretty quickly if someone's end result is getting you to buy versus find out what your need is
Yeah.
and discovery?
And I
It's
feel
pretty
like-
easy to uncover, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like the good ones is where they discover something. Like maybe you don't discover anything. You get a lot of good information about them and you can help serve them with that. But they have discovered by the end that they need to move forward and buy or sell or stay or go or do whatever it is. But it's like you've asked the right questions for them to dig deeper into what they were thinking, not necessarily for you to like, are you ready to move? Like they've discovered something.
Right. A powerful script will promote self-discovery.
Yeah.
It's not that you're telling them this is the answer. It's that you are creating a space where they are able to discover what's the answer.
Yeah.
So imagine you went to the doctor and you get back into the exam room and you sit down and the doctor sits down and says, so, what do you want to do now? What's next? I guess tell me about the symptoms you have going on. Oh, yeah, okay. What have you, well, maybe we should try. You'd be running for the hills, right?
Yeah.
You'd be finding a new doctor. Your doctor is scripted. Your accountant is scripted. Your attorney is scripted. And that scripting creates a sense of comfort and confidence. And it projects their competence. And so you are doing the consumer a service when you have solid scripting and when you really lean into that scripting. You are creating an environment that they can breathe and feel more comfortable. And you're creating a more comfortable situation for yourself where you're not sitting there scrambling going, what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next. It also, scripting is important around high emotion, high conflict situations, and it allows you to better prepare your clients for those circumstances. So in non-COVID times, I do a lot of flying and probably travel a couple of times a month. And I'm actually fairly terrified of planes because I'm a control freak. And so the fact that I'm in this thing, that I have no control over is terrifying. But I am much more comfortable through the flight when the pilot comes on and says, hey, we're coming up to this section. There's going to be some turbulence. So for the next few minutes, you're going to feel some bumps. We should be able to get through it here. This is the plan for it. And we move forward. I'm fine. I can sleep through that. But you get one of those big bumps that nobody prepared me for, and I'm freaking out going, did you know that was going to happen? Did she know that was going to happen? Is everything okay? So that happens to our clients in real estate a lot. When you're a newer agent, you feel those bumps a lot more because it's your first time around oftentimes. 13 years in, it's got to be a pretty big bump for me to feel it. Like we can hit a whole bunch of turbulence and I'm still sleeping fine at night because I know we're going to get through it, no problem. But that's not true for my clients. And so it's important that I have powerful scripting in place to prepare them for those bumps so that they can have an easier time getting through them and feel like this is all part of the plan and that it's all what's expected and not that it caught me off guard. So what else? Anything else with scripts? Any other reason we lean into them? These are the main ones for me. The only one I think we haven't talked about is scripting allows you to effectively convey what it is that you do, what it is that you can expect next in the transaction. And again, when you're early on in your career, you're developing those neural pathways, you're figuring it all out. And so you are much more acutely aware of every step of the transaction and every step of the process. When you get further in your career and this just becomes second nature, one of the things that happens, like actually legitimately happens with the brain, is that you lose the neural pathways to explain how it is that you do what you do. So if you look at any other skill set, like a great golfer, if you have them break down why it is that they're able to hit that shot, it's difficult for them to do because those neural pathways aren't there anymore. So when you're building your career and you become very competent in these skill sets, I find that people become less competent in explaining those skill sets. They become less competent in explaining the process to someone who's never been through it before, unless they have powerful scripting. So I think that's the other thing is it makes it so that you can better describe what it is that you do and better communicate that to the consumer. So as far as the limiting beliefs go, because pretty much everything on that list, I want to be my authentic self, and I might not be good at it, I might be embarrassed, and the fear of rejection, those are all limiting beliefs. There's a lot of different ways to get through those. My personal preference is to ask myself, what if that wasn't true? So if I'm afraid to get on the phone because I'm sure that this person would think that I sound like a salesperson. So what if that wasn't true? What if I got on the phone and they didn't think I was a salesperson? And then to act as if that were the case. I play tricks on myself sometimes, and will tell myself that we're going to try this out, and maybe it's true. Maybe they are going to think I sound like a salesperson, and maybe they won't. And I'll take a little tally and see where we're at the end. And inevitably we get through it. You have to find a way to trick yourself to just do it. Because at the end of the day, anything that you take on that is a new skill set, anything that you take on that is growth, is going to be outside of your comfort zone. No growth happens inside the comfort zone. And so there is always going to be some level of fear in there. And the mistake is waiting for that fear to go away in order to take it on. When really the only thing that's going to get rid of that fear is to take it on. So, whether it's asking yourself, what if that wasn't true, and going for it, or sometimes I will, if it's something that I'm scared about doing, I'll make myself like a deal, like I'm going to do this for an hour, and it might be really, really, really terrible, but I've worked through every possible scenario and it's not going to kill me. So we're just going to try it for an hour and then I'll decide after that. Like whatever it is you have to trick yourself into doing it, that's what I would suggest, is trick yourself into doing it. The other thing that I would strongly suggest is our brains are really powerful things, and they will do all sorts of things to protect us from pain. So if you have a fear of some underlying pain, like the fear of rejection, and your brain thinks if she gets on the phone and starts making calls, she's going to be rejected and she's going to be in pain, we have to do something. It will come up with all sorts of logical reasons that you need to not, and all sorts of arguments against it. The script is stupid, it's not effective, you really need to work on this more, you really need to find a new script. So again, that making the commitment to do it, to feel that fear and do it anyway, and just kind of tell that brain that it just needs to be quiet. Thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm not going to die from this, so I'm just going to give it a shot. That's to me the most effective way to get through it. I have not found a way to sit down and meditate and write affirmations and logically get to the place where then all my fear dissipates and whatever I'm going to do that scared me, the fear is gone and I can just go have a blast with it. If you figure it out, let me know. I will be front row Joe for that class, but I haven't found the way, but doing it, that's what accomplishes it for me. And then the other thing that I find with that is as you go through and do whatever activity it is that terrified you, take a little bit of time to debrief afterwards. So this is what I was afraid would happen, and this is what happened. It actually did happen, and here's how that felt, and I didn't die. Or this is what I was afraid would happen, and actually this is what happened, and we had great conversations and connections, and it felt fabulous. The more that you create that track record for yourself, the more that you can then, as you are facing new big and scary challenges, because bad news, guys, like 13 years in, there's still stuff that scares me because I'm still growing. And thank heavens, I'd be horrified if there wasn't. It would be time to find a new career because I would be bored in 2 minutes flat. But that way, when you face those things, you have that track record that you can look back on, that you can flip through and say, well, this scared me, but then this happened. And gosh, if I think about doing that now, it's nothing. I could do that, no problem. So maybe that's true here too. Anything else you guys have to add as far as getting over limiting beliefs, getting past your fear?
What are some things you use or ways to trick yourself in terms of sticking to a script and a sentence? Is it just repetition? Or like making sure you don't add little...
Right. Making sure you don't let them off the hook right after you get them there. So it's a couple of things. One is really having those scripts memorized and internalized. So we'll talk about that and some skill building around that. The other is, again, the debrief. So I am a huge fan of the debrief for how I feel about something that was scary going into. I'm also a huge fan of any time, like in my first few years of business, anytime I was doing an hour of power of prospecting, anytime I went into a buyer consultation, anytime I showed a property, I took notes afterwards about what worked, what didn't. Where did I feel really solid? What did I not say that I just really wish that I had?
Yeah.
And then when I was working on my role playing and scripting and working with my coach, when I was working on the business, those were the things that I would go back to and focus on. And when I work with sellers, I'll tell them when we're evaluating feedback, if one person says it, okay, let's be aware of it, but we don't need to put too much focus on that. If we have 5 people that come through and all say the same thing, then, you know, it's probably something that we need to address. We're looking for the trends. So it's really the same with those debriefs. If it comes up once, like, here's the thing, you're going to memorize and internalize and have these scripts down. And the goal, if I'm being honest, is to hit it about 80%. If you get it about 80%, you're killing it.
Mm-hmm.
There are always going to be some things that you didn't say that you wish you had. There are always going to be things that you say that you're like, dear mother of God, why did that come out of my mouth? And that you have to figure out. Like there just is. We're human.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a part of what makes it so it's not robotic, honestly. So it's okay. But if you're at 80%, that is enough to keep the conversation going the direction that you intend. So there will be those little things that pop up. But when you start seeing those trends, that's where you can identify it, like, and it sounds like you have, like, this is what I see that I do.
Yeah.
And so then it's telling your role play partner, okay, listen, I'm great with getting through the script. And then every time, this is what I come back with, and let them off the hook. And that's what you're going to work on with them again and again and again. It's telling if you're working with a coach or if you have an accountability partner, enroll people to help listen for that. And then look for it with your next appointments. Then the goal is looking through and saying from your debriefing notes, like, okay, 4 out of 5 times, I did not let them off the hook. And celebrating that, celebrating the progress. It is about progress, not perfection. So, yeah, it's very good that you have identified where the challenge points for you. That's definitely the first step right now. So
with identifying it, I've been in it, I think most of us have, I'm sure you have, in situations where maybe you have had 3 or 4 different presentations and you're not getting the close ratio that you expect. And then what most people do, hopefully at least, is you kind of replay it in your mind afterwards, right? We're trying to make sense of things. And when you replay it enough, if you do it as often as you can, at some point you're going to see, just like you said, Dominique, okay, this is where people are clicking off. But if you want to fast forward that, I'm going to say record those conversations, because you're basing it off of memory, right? And you're looking for clues. Like when you go through these same presentations, appointments, listing presentations over and over again, you're going through your memory and you're trusting your memory and mind's that already to look for those clues. But if you really want to fast forward it, record those conversations. It's going to help a lot.
it is the most painful and useful tool that you can use. I would record early on, especially every time you get on the phone and have a prospecting session, record yourself. Every time you have an appointment, record yourself, and then listen to them and do the debrief and be honest. And when I say be honest with yourself, I mean the good and the bad. Like, there is a real tendency for a lot of personality types to listen to something and pick apart every single thing that you did and make yourself sick, bad, and wrong about it. And that's not useful. That's not useful, and it's not true. Nor is it true that you could listen to it and go, no, that was perfect, and there was nothing I would change about it. Like, there's going to be something. So just be really honest and look for the areas of improvement and embrace those areas. I mean, the thing is, if you aren't in a place where you have achieved all of your hopes, goals, and dreams, and you have the number of clients that you want to be working with and the number of closings and the amount of money in the bank and everything is just perfect. If you're not there, then thank heavens there's room for improvement, because otherwise you'd be in trouble. But the fact that there is room for improvement in your skill set means that that's what's going to propel you towards what your goals and dreams are. So embrace that, look for it, enjoy it, and know that that's normal, that that's a normal part of developing your skill set, is having those areas for improvement. So let's talk about the anatomy of a good script. And I'm not going to go through specific scripts and do role playing. I know you've got Chris that's working on that, and an abundance of scripts available to you. And if you want any tips on where to find good scripts, we can talk about that later, but finding the words, it's not a big deal. But let's just talk about the anatomy of it. What makes a script a good script? Thoughts on that?
On what it is that makes a good script? Definitely finding the problem
Yes.
and then connection,
Mhm.
as well as, so the book I'm reading, it goes through, they call it FORD, which is family, occupations, recreation, and dreams.
Right.
So if you can find one of those things, it usually leads to their issue.
Yeah, I think that really hits the nail on the head as far as you're looking to identify what's the pain point, what's the problem, and then have the scripting around how you are the solution. And there's a quote that I really love that is, you want to be the painkiller, not the vitamin. Vitamins are good for you, and vitamins in scripting or vitamins in a prospecting conversation would be telling them all of the things that are really great about working with you, that you would do that would be just really wonderful, that's going to make a big difference for them. And it's true. It's true. But it's not necessarily compelling. But a painkiller, finding what their pain point is, finding where they're feeling it and addressing that, that's what's compelling. That's what converts. That's what gets you from the yeah to the okay, so when can we meet? And that's where you want to get. What do you think about the balance of questions to statements?
Talk more. Just
No.
kidding. Good.
So many words.
The more I say, the better it goes. No.
So as long as you're asking the right questions, you shouldn't be doing any talking, really.
Mhm.
Right? They say if you talk for more than 2 minutes, you've lost them. And that's, they say, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
I love
wrong.
that they.
I was gonna say I'm wrong 90% of the time, so but that's something I hear.
It's so there's a couple things that happen when you start telling, and there's the adage, telling is not selling, and it's true. When you start telling, you are more likely to have them tune out. And if you just think about this in your own life, it's true, right? Like if someone's asking you questions, if you're involved in the conversation, you're paying attention. If someone's talking for too long, I'm going elsewhere mentally. Like it just, it's very hard to stay engaged when you don't have to. And so, so asking questions keeps them engaged. If we've identified that the goal of scripting and the goal of a compelling conversation is to discover, there's nothing to discover from what you have to say. You have already discovered that. Congratulations. If we're going to discover, we need them to start talking. That's questions get you there. Questions get you to listening, which is very important. And then you will build more rapport with the person that you're talking with, the more questions that you're asking, the more that they're talking. People like hearing themselves talk. So the more that they are talking, the more that they will like you. The people that you ask a lot of questions to and that do a lot of the talking and the conversation will think you are the most interesting and intelligent person that they've talked to, because they're hearing themselves talk, and that is just human nature. So questions are important for just building that rapport. They also will extend out the conversation. For my experience with prospecting is the name of the game is really getting into a deeper conversation. So the longer my conversations are, typically the higher my effectiveness is. If we have a short and sweet conversation, it is typically difficult for that to really be a conversion conversation. Now, there are exceptions to that, And if I'm talking to a high D personality and they're giving me bullet points, we may get through that call really quickly. I'm still going to say we'll have converted to the next step, but we're going to have to get through a few steps before we really get to them fully being converted, which is okay. But if I can really get into conversation, if you can really create that back and forth, you can have somebody who's ready to be attached to you as a client for life before you even meet face to face. And so, so the questions extend that out and create a little bit more of that cadence. So for me, I found that if a script has anything less than 3 questions to 1 statement, I've got to revisit it and tweak things. So that's the 3 questions to 1 statement is an okay pattern. And when I say questions, those have to be open-ended questions. So that would also be 3 questions to 1 yes or no question. If it's a yes or no, that's basically the same thing as a statement. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So when you're looking at your scripting, take a second and just evaluate that. You don't have to toss a script out if it's not structured that way. Look at any statements in there and ask yourself, how could I turn this into an open-ended question? And you have resources here. So lean on each other, lean on Chris, lean on me. Hey, I've got this statement. Give me some ideas about how we could turn this into an open-ended question. The more you start thinking that way, the better in being able to take any script that you receive or any information that you want to give and making it an effective script. Because sometimes the scripting is just, I need to call somebody and convey this information. But if you're skilled at doing that reformatting, you can take that information and turn it into a more effective script. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So honestly, maybe even more important than what you say is how you say it. And when you're working with scripting, working with that piece of it is critical. How you're saying it and how you're responding to what they say. So I'm going to hit a couple of topics and try and get through them quickly. How are we on time, Chris?
Great. We have 18 minutes,
Don't worry about
20-ish
it.
minutes. So,
Somebody give me this sign if I start going too long on one topic. So to convey listening, the most important tool that I have worked with is repeat and affirm. Is this something that you guys are familiar with yet?
No.
Okay. So here's the way that cadence works. I ask an open-ended question. So you mentioned you're looking for a home in Sandy. Tell me, what is it about staying in Sandy that's really important to you? They give me an answer. I really want to stay in Sandy because we've got 3 kids and 2 of them are in an immersion program. And so we really want to keep them in the same school. I don't want to change that. And we can live anywhere in Sandy, but that's where we've got to be. A natural response would be to say, oh, okay, yeah, great. Uh-huh. And when I listen in on prospecting, I hear a whole lot of that. Because of course, if I'm just hearing this one end, I'll hear like a question and then, uh-huh, yeah, mm-hmm, okay, yeah, mm-hmm, right. So there's some affirming in there, but how does that sound to you as I go through that?
Like you don't care.
Yes,
it's a survey.
yes. It sounds insincere. It sounds like I don't care. It doesn't give them any feedback or reinforcement. And it starts to sound, especially if you are scripting with a lot of questions, it starts to sound like you are just peppering them with questions. And then there's never any feedback. And so it can feel a little bit like an inquisition. The way to get around that is to repeat and affirm. So yeah, I want to have my kids in Sandy so that they can stay in this immersion program. Oh, your kids are in an immersion program. Great. Then you go on to the next question. So you're going to repeat back to them a part of what they said and follow that up with some kind of an affirmation. Both parts are very important. If you do not repeat back to them and you just go for the affirmation, you're going to sound like, great, awesome, yeah, interesting, I can see that.
Is that Mike Perry? Yeah, yeah.
I don't have to worry about that getting out there. So it sounds cheesy, it sounds insincere. They're gonna get off the phone with you as quickly as possible. And they're gonna stop answering the questions because they don't feel like there's any real response. If you just repeat back to them, oh, your kids are in an immersion program. And then you go on to the next question. Remember we said the person on the other end of that phone or the person across the table from you, their greatest fear is rejection as well. So they're going to start going, I mean, is that okay? Is it okay that I want to keep my kids? I mean, is that a stupid reason to buy in, Sandy? Maybe I should be looking at are there other schools with immersion programs? Are immersion programs even okay? Does she like immersion programs? She might hate them. Like, people's mind is a scary place to be. And if they don't get that little bit of feedback that what they said is valid and heard and appreciated and okay, you're going to have a break in that trust and in that rapport. And just like the script allows your mind to be quiet so that you can hear what it is that they have to say and discover what it is you need to do next, giving them that affirmation keeps their mind quiet so that it's not spinning around, is everything that I just said okay? And they're able to really engage in the conversation. So repeat and affirm, repeat and affirm. Anytime you ask a question, this is not like with the questions to telling ratio of 3 to 1, like this is anytime someone gives you an answer, you want to repeat and affirm. The other thing that this does is it gives you a chance to check your comprehension of what they're saying. Sometimes people, because they don't have a copy of the script, say something and it's not exactly what they meant. And hearing it back from you lets them say, oh, well, I mean, no, we don't have to be right there. It would be okay to actually have these other things too. And it gives them a chance to edit that. And that gives you better information. Sometimes we'll say something and you will hear it incorrectly. And so as you're speaking it back to them, they'll say, well, no, I mean, this is actually what I said, or this is actually what I meant. And so it gives you a chance to make sure that you're actually on the same page so you get better information. And if our whole point in these compelling conversations is discovery, so that you're discovering the right stuff, right? And again, it's going to slow that conversation down just a little bit. It gives your brain a minute to catch up. Giving them that repeat and affirm gives you a minute to get to, okay, here's what my next question is. And it just keeps that cadence in a more comfortable place. So practicing repeating and affirming. And the great thing about this is that you do not have to be in a role play session or talking to somebody about real estate to practice repeat and affirm. I practice it on everyone. So repeat and affirm your spouse, repeat and affirm your roommate, repeat and affirm your parents, repeat and affirm your kids. When you're at the grocery store, repeat and affirm. Anytime you ask anyone a question, repeat and affirm, and just get a feel for that being more comfortable. The other thing that I did when I was first learning this skill set is that I had, in my area that I would do prospecting, I had cards with the different affirmations up there, because you also want to be sure that you don't always lean on the same affirmation. If everything is awesome, nothing is awesome. So you want to vary that. So having those up helped me to do that. The nice thing with when you're recording yourself is you will pick up your habits. So if there's one that you're leaning into multiple times, you can start smacking yourself on the head for that, or maybe remove that card so you don't lean into that one. For me, if I go unconscious with it, I will double affirm. So, oh, you're moving to Milwaukee. Great. Every time I hear it, I want to gag. So recording it lets me hear that and go, okay, so no, you don't need 2 greats. 1 great is fine. So it's a helpful tool with any of your conversations. And it's one of those things that maybe I would remember that I was saying it twice, but probably not. I'm probably engaged enough in the conversation that I would forget about it. I hate that I told you guys my tick now because you're going to listen for it, but but that's the radical honesty. So that's repeat and affirm, and you can practice it in all of your conversations. It should be a part of every single script and every single communication that you have. It may feel a little clunky at first, and I have heard from people that there's a fear that, oh my gosh, they're gonna hate that I'm saying the thing back. Like, we're gonna get 4 of these in, and they're like, why do you keep repeating back to me what I just said? 13 years of repeating and affirming every conversation I have yet to have someone say, quit saying back to me what it is that I say. Now, I did make the mistake of taking my oldest daughter to a scripting class where she learned about repeat and affirm, and now will absolutely call me out on it. She has to learn about downswings, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and embedded commands. And so she totally screwed up my effective communication with her. But if they don't know to listen for it, if they don't have a copy of the script, they're not going to notice. They are just going to see you as an effective communicator. They're going to see you as, oh man, he really gets me. He really listens. He really gets it. And that's how you're conveying that you really get it. So the other tool that I want to talk about is the downswing. And this is something that I find important, particularly because we live in Utah, which is a really, really nice state. And we are all really, really conditioned and trained to be really, really, really nice. And sometimes being really, really, really nice equates to like being milk toast. And that's not effective. And one of the speech patterns that we fall into often as a state, and particularly for women, is an upswing at the end of the sentence. So, have you had any thoughts about selling your home? And it feels natural because it's nice and because it's a question. I'm asking a question, so I should go up at the end. The problem is the upswing creates doubt. So you want to practice, if this is something that you hear yourself doing, you want to practice the downswing. So that is, have you had any thoughts about selling your home? How long have you lived in this area? If you were to list with an agent, what would you be looking for? Like, it's that downswing, not the upswing. So as you start to play with this, you will hear people, it's terrible, but you'll start hearing people doing it, and notice how it feels. Notice how it feels when somebody uses an upswing with you. Notice that little bit of doubt that it creates. Notice if it makes you question your answer more before you give that response. And then just practice with yourself the downswing. It's again that part of instilling confidence. And our customers, our clients deserve to work with a confident agent, because that confidence makes them feel confident about the process. So really, if you're not willing to do this work for yourself, do it for your clients. Do it so that they can have a better experience and a more comfortable buying or selling experience. And selfishly, do it for our industry, because agents that aren't doing this and are creating transactions where the client feels panicked and doesn't know what's going on, give us a bad name. And so help your fellow agent by creating a better experience, by creating that confidence in the client. Anything else that you notice with speech patterns? Mirror matching is the other one that I wanted to talk about. So have you guys looked much at mirror matching? Yeah.
A little bit, but let's
Okay.
hear your stance.
You want to hear my take on it?
Yeah.
All right, here's my 2-second take on it. 2 minutes maybe. So you want to meet the person that you're talking to where they are, and then lead them to where you want them to be. So that means meeting them energetically. So if you are talking to someone and they're talking slowly and they are a little more guarded, and then you start talking to them like this, it's too much, y'all. Slow it down. Meet them where they're at. Now, energy creates momentum, so you want to raise that energy, but you want to raise it slowly. So building rapport is really fun in person because you can see it happen. If you watch body language and you're matching somebody's body language as you're talking to them, if I want to check and see if we're in rapport and if we're at the place where I can start leading this conversation, I'm going to change my position and then wait for a minute and see if they do. If they change their position, they are now following me and I can take them where we need to go. If they are still like this, I am not there yet and I need to follow back on where they are, match them for a while longer, and then get them there. So energetically, you want to meet them where they are. Speech patterns, meet them where they are. You're listening in these conversations for what profile it is that you're talking to, so that you can talk to them in a way that they want to be talked to. So if I am talking to a D, they want bullet points, they want results, they don't want to know about the how, they want to know what I'm going to get done. And I need to say it in as few words as possible. Now I'm still asking them the open-ended questions. I am still repeating and affirming. That does not change, but I'm going to change my rate of speech, and I'm going to change the number of words I'm using, and I'm going to change my intonation to match where they are so that they're hearing it because I'm saying it in the way that they want to be spoken to. If I'm talking to an S personality and I start talking to them like a D, they are going to shut down completely. So then I need to take a softer approach, and I need to focus more on the people that are involved, and I need to be asking questions around those people and knowing what it is that motivates that personality type and asking the right questions for that personality type. So I'm listening for that, and I'll jot down notes. As I'm talking to somebody, I'm going to jot down what I think their personality type is. I'm going to jot down any of the key things that I know that I need to keep in mind as we're talking to be able to speak to them in the way that they want to be spoken to. And like I said, you're going to start matching their energy. Once you can start feeling them following you, then you can raise that energy just a little bit. The same thing if you're going into a conversation with somebody who's really upset. If you go in with sunshine and rainbows to begin with, they're not going to listen to you. And they're going to resent you for being sunshine and rainbows. And they're going to want to convince you as to why nothing is sunshine and rainbows. In fact, there will never be sunshine and rainbows again. Mm-hmm. If you match them where they're at with being upset about something or being frustrated about something or a little bit more of that energy, then you can convert them to the, okay, so here's what's next. Here's what our options are. This is what I see as the next best step. And you can get them to sunshine and rainbows, but you got to be here with them first. You've got to acknowledge that this sucks before you take them to what the other options are. Does that make sense? Yes. I think that's it for me on mirror and matching. Chris, do you have anything else that you don't think I have?
No, I think that's excellent. Okay, so maybe, well, I do have a couple questions at the end, but going into that, you've talked about personality styles. Mm-hmm. What do you use to uncover those personality styles in, let's say, a phone conversation? And I'm trying not to lead too much here, but like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, fine. Like, what questions might you ask to uncover that?
So I'm listening for a few things. One is rate of speech. If I'm talking to somebody and they are clipped in their answers and they are cutting me off as I'm talking, I am most likely talking to a D personality. Could be an I. Eyes will sometimes cut you off, but not usually. Eyes are usually waiting for you to stop talking so that they can tell you their great stories. So, but D's will like literally shut down and stop listening to you. Like they've heard the one thing that they want and everything else you're saying is irrelevant. So if I hear that happening, I'm talking to a D. Here's what I'll tell you about talking to a D, particularly if you don't have a high D in your disc profile. They will likely hurt your feelings. Stop taking it personally. It is not about you. It is about how they connect to and communicate with the world. You can be saying exactly what they want to be hearing, and they are still going to respond to you in that way. If you hear what a D says through an S filter, you are going to get your feelings hurt every time. Because if an S were to cut you off like that, if an S were to say, yeah, okay, but what are you going to do with this? Like, that S would be upset. A D is going to do that on a great day when the sky is blue and they're super happy with what's going on. Yeah. So you're hearing it through the wrong filter. So know what their personality is and just know what to take personally and what to not. So that's how I hear a D, and they're pretty easy to spot. I's, if they, when you're talking to somebody that's really easy to engage with, and they just want to start talking your ear off, and you feel like, oh my gosh, I've known this person forever, and they feel like they've known you forever, and you're probably talking to an I on the phone. For I's, if it's not fun, they're not going to do it.
Over here like, oh my gosh, you know
Oh
what?
my-
She's so soul. So if it's not fun, they're not going to do it. So make it fun. Ask them fun questions, laugh at their jokes, know that you're going to be on the phone for a little bit longer. Now, if you're a D, you're going to have to get that in check, because if you start clipping them off, they're going to feel shut down and you're going to break rapport. So you have to remember, when I'm on the phone, my personality type is irrelevant. I am whatever personality type it is you need to hear from today. Doesn't mean that I need to be a D when I'm talking to a D. It just means that I need to know how Ds want to communicate. Doesn't mean that I need to become an I. The I can be the I, and I can just be there with them, and that's fine. So, but just know that how you like to be communicated with is really irrelevant if you are looking to have a compelling conversation with someone else. S's are sometimes tricky because, and not tricky to identify. The thing that I think is tough about S's is that there will be a problem and you won't know about it, because they are very polite and they don't want to be a bother, and really they just shouldn't be bringing this up to. It's okay, it's fine, I'm sure you have it figured out, but they are stewing about it. So your S's, you have to, I find, ask more questions to really get to, but like, hey, are you really actually okay? And you can identify an S when you're talking to somebody, again, like if they're really soft and they're willing to kind of follow the conversation, and they'll stay on the phone with you. They're not going to hang up on you like a D would. They're not necessarily going to talk your ear off like an I would, but they'll listen, and because you're really nice, and so they'll be there with you. You start hearing that on the phone, like you're talking to an S, and just know you need to ask a lot of questions. Also know that you, when you're talking to an S, need to find out about the primary relationships in their life, because that will be a very important part of that decision-making process. The C's are going to have a million questions for you. C's like data. So if I'm talking to someone that starts asking a lot of data-driven questions, a lot of specifics, that's typically going to be a C personality. I am married to a C. I have like none in my personality, which any C that I'm in relationship with that hears that is like, no, you have a lot of C. No, I have none. But I've been married for 23 years to a C, and so I have great coping strategies with C. I will work with your engineers and your accountants all day long, because I know who they need me to be in the transaction to feel comfortable in making a decision. I am so comfortable with a cost-benefit analysis chart, and so when you're talking to a C, that they're going to be asking, they're going to need a lot of information. And they're not going to feel comfortable making a decision until they have a lot of information. And so if you notice in a conversation that their questions seem framed in that way, or that their responses are framed in that way, you know, when you ask about what's important to them in the home that they're buying, they say, well, I have a spreadsheet I can forward to you. We've really looked at this, and you're dealing with a C. Then you can be prepared to overload with information. And I find if you really get ahead of that and front load, the C's are really easy to work with. I think honestly for me, which is funny because I am so high D and I, the C's are probably the easiest personality type, because I just a lot of practice. So, how about for you? What are the ways that you identify?
Well, so going into identifying as a new agent, usually, and it goes back to the questions, right? Questions like, describe for me. Tell me more. Why is that important to you? Things like that, where they get to expand on things. You can pick it out pretty quickly. Again, it's getting them to be in a space where they can go through things. I don't know how to say
And
it.
if you're talking to a D and you say, describe to me, there may be silence on the other line.
Like, why?
And they'd be like, what?
Yeah,
You're talking to a D,
Yeah.
pivot.
yeah. Why are you talking about
And you
this?
say
Yeah.
describe to me to an I, you're gonna hear all about it. An S, you're gonna hear all about it.
Yeah.
Describe is a little bit of a touchy-feely language for C's, but they'll get there because that's a detailed question. So you can, the reaction, even if it's not giving you the information, will often give you the clues that you need. The other thing that's interesting to know is kind of what their primary drivers as far as fear is. So like with D's, they're afraid of being taken advantage of. So if you're getting information in your questions that feels like this is somebody who's kind of holding people at arm's length because they're worried they're going to be taken advantage of, you're probably dealing with a D. If you've got an I personality, it's that fear of rejection is huge. So that is the biggest problem for them. An S, it's going to be a fear of hurting people. And then a C, it's going to be a fear of making the wrong decision. So listen for those things as you're talking to them as well. How are we on time? Do we have a second to talk about memorization?
It's up to you guys. Are you good for a minute? If anyone does need to take off, you're fine.
I will
But
take
yeah,
it
we
deeply
can
personally
continue on.
because I'm an I and I will feel
Ah.
rejected. Just kidding. So we've talked about the why scripts are important. We've talked about the components of the script. But all of it really is irrelevant if you don't actually memorize and internalize the scripts. And I say both parts, the memorize and internalize, because most often when there is a disconnect, if someone is using a script and there is a disconnect, they are still feeling awkward in their conversations, or it's not creating the results that they're looking for. It is typically because they've maybe gotten to hear with the memorization and they need to get to hear. It's not deep enough for it to be like just really a part of who you are and how you speak. And so the great news is that's really easy to fix. It's just more script practice. So when I'm memorizing a script, and I still do this now because there are still scripts every day that are new for me, I will write it first. And written by hand to me is essential. And this is true even for the long scripts. So when I was first mastering my bio presentation, I would write out the entire bio presentation by hand. Yes, my hands got tired. Yes, I did have a phone I could type on and a computer I could type on. But again, it's those neural pathways that it creates when you are actually writing by hand. There's also something that's very powerful about seeing your own handwriting. You don't like your own handwriting with those words, that helps with creating a memory. And so writing it out by hand is essential. When I am learning a script, I will typically write it out by hand at least 3 times a day. Now with the long ones, like a buyer presentation or a listing presentation, I'm only writing that out once a day. That takes a chunk of time. But if it's a short script, I'm gonna write it out 3 times a day until I feel like I have it really internalized. When I'm first working with a script, I'm going to chant it. So I run through it as quickly as possible without worrying about nuance, without worrying about waiting for their response. I just want to get comfortable with the words in my mouth. So I'm just going to run through it and chant it. I like doing this somewhere where no one can hear me or see me because I've got a whole like image ego thing going on, but but you can do it wherever. But it doesn't require a role play partner, and no one needs to listen to you do it, and no one needs to give you feedback, and you don't even need to record it yourself doing it at this point. Like, you are just getting comfortable with the words. So when I'm comfortable with the words and I've been writing it out, then I'm going to start working with the script and listening to myself to hear, okay, am I throwing in an upswing anywhere that I need a downswing? Am I, where's the important emphasis in this? What are the questions that I'm asking? And working to make sure that it sounds right. So at least when I'm reading it, like I may not be off book yet, but when I'm reading it, it sounds in a compelling way. And once that's the case, then I record myself reading that script. And then until I am so comfortable with this script that you could wake me up in the middle of the night and I would just give it to you, word for word, that is what I listen to. That is what I listen to when I am in the car. That is what I listen to if I am stuck in line somewhere. It's in my earphones when I'm listening. That's what I listen to while I get ready in the morning. Yes, I hate the sound of my voice. I am human. That is normal. Get over it, because it is so powerful to hear yourself saying those words. It is more powerful than having a recording of anybody else saying the script. So I'll listen to it all the time. And then I will do like a listen, and then I'll pause and say the script back without my notes in front of me. And then I listen again, and I listen for where did I get lost? Where did I lose sight of it? And I can practice that a little bit more. And then role play is essential. And I still have a role play partner that I work with. He's in New Jersey, so we have a call once a week that we'll go through and role play whatever script it is that we're working on. And we are great friends, and we talk about all sorts of things in our lives, but not when we're on our role play call. So there is like sacred rules around the role play call. And those rules are that we call, and as soon as the person picks up the phone, you are right into the script, whoever it is that's starting. And the person that is receiving the script gets to throw out at least 3 objections, so that we get some practice in handling those objections and getting back on track. But that person also always gets to close, because you want to practice your wins. Like, there will be plenty of conversations where you can't get them where you want to. Don't have that be a part of your role play. Like, challenge each other, but get to that win, because you want to practice that end result that you're intending for. And then I will tell him in advance, or he'll tell me in advance if there's something specific that I'm working on. So if I have an objection that I've gotten a couple of times this week, I'm going to make sure that he's throwing that at me so that I can work on that. If he's noticed that he's letting them off the hook when he gets to this point in the script, he's going to make sure I'm aware of that so that I can be listening for it. And it's just a quick call, and then we're done. It is an essential part of your practice. And the thing is, if you think through the cost of getting in front of a real live lead, like if you're paying for those leads, or if you had to call through everybody that you've ever known to find this one person that's willing to sell their house and list with you, and then you finally have it listed and you're at the open house, like, you had to go through so much to get here, to get this person across from you, to talk to them. Don't practice then. Practice when it's somebody who is never going to list with you or or buy a home from you. Practice when it's somebody that it truly doesn't matter, so that then when you get into that conversation, you have the best shot. Like, you're not going to close them all. I'm not going to close them all, but I want the very best chance that I'm going to close them when I finally get to that conversation that I've worked so hard to cultivate and get them there. So that's what works for me with memorization. And then again, because I'm doing the debriefing after conversations, and to be fully honest, I don't now do it every time I get on a prospect, but if I'm doing something new, I still do. So like when we were early on in COVID, and it dramatically changed the conversations that I was having with my sphere of influence, I went back to taking those notes as I was prospecting and debriefing afterwards to see, okay, what's the response? And are there things that I need to be aware of, trends that I need to know going into these next calls that may come up? And so really debriefing, taking those notes, so that you can see where your growth areas are and really address those. That's the best way I found to get through it.
Awesome.
Anything else?
Great info.
Yeah, great info. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Yes.
I've been holding the back.